Hammer time. It's hammer time. Well, my name is Dave Herring, and this is the story about how I became a Christian. I really believe that Jesus saved my family, literally saved my family. My family had come apart when I was younger. My parents split when I was young. I was 4 years old, and 6 years old when they were divorced. And my mother left my father for another man and got remarried. And me and my two older sisters were, had to move up to New Hampshire, and there was a tension that was in my family growing up. Through a series of providential circumstances, God began to work on my mother's heart. My mother was working for a stockbroker, and she had a coworker there. Her name was Jenny. And Jenny had something, I don't know, different. Just, she had a countenance about her. She had a way about her. There was a love and humility and a strength and a grace. And it's something that blew my mother away. And for my mom, she was very hesitant about Christianity. She had a Catholic background. She went to, Catholic school all the way through junior high. And so when she met Jenny, she, just didn't understand that, Jenny was what would, back in the day, a born-again Christian. And, but as they developed a friendship, my mother could just sense that, I want to be like her. She's got a peace about her. She's got a love about her. And when they, started to talk more and get in depth about their lives, and my mother asked her, why are you so different? And she said, well, I'm a follower of Christ, and he loved me and gave his life for me. And he's done that for all of us. We're all sinners. We all deserve God's wrath and judgment, and yet God became one of us in the person of Jesus Christ. He took the punishment that we all deserve, and he rose from the dead as a preview of the resurrection that all of his people will have. And Jenny had a humility about her. My mother really appreciated that. And so this led to my mother learning about a new church that was starting in our area. This is 1989. Pastor Paul and his family were starting a church in New Hampshire, Manchester, New Hampshire, where we were. And they were doing what back in the day when you started the church, you would go through the phone book and you would start calling people. And they had this little thing called cookie calls. And cookie calls is it's literally trying to hand off, cookies for people, drop off cookies, and as a way of just getting to know the area. And for Pastor Paul, he had a bunch of people who were calling on behalf of this new church that was starting, and they called our house. We got on their list somehow, and my sister picks up the phone and hears about a new church that's starting, happens to be starting at a junior high that we know about. And so my sister says, yeah, I think we're going to go, and hands the phone off to my mother, gets the information. And the second week of the life of that church, my sister and my mother went. And from that point on, our family kind of became churchgoers. Me and my sisters didn't always go to church, didn't always want to go to church, but it became a fixture in the life of my mother and my stepfather. And consequently, that summer, after we started going to church, my mother, who had not, become a Christian yet, she had like one of those summer fevers, and she got really, really sick. And I think my mother struggled with a lot of guilt for things that she had experienced in her life or gone through in her life. And not only that, there's a lot of grief in her life. She had lost her mother back in the early 70s due to a fire, and she had lost her father in the early 80s. And there's just a lot of searching that she was doing. And so while she was sick, she had called Pastor Paul. Pastor Paul came over to the house, and my stepfather was working out back, like he always did, on a weekend especially. And so Pastor Paul sat there in the kitchen with my mother and explained to her the gospel of Jesus Christ, just like Jenny had explained to my mom. And it was that time that my mother said, okay, like I want to become a Christian. I want forgiveness, and I want to have this relationship with God that is real, and that is gracious, and that is powerful. And my mother embraced Jesus as her Savior, as her rescuer. And it's crazy because my stepfather comes from working out back, and sees Pastor there, sees my mom, is like, hey, what's going on? What you guys talking about? And then, like, as they explain what's happening, my stepfather just gets convicted, starts hearing the gospel himself, and he says, I think I want to become a Christian too. And so right there in our kitchen at home, my mother and my stepfather became Christians. Now, here's what's cool about that is my mother and my stepfather obviously did not have a good relationship with my father. And so there was a lot of tension, like I had mentioned. And so with that tension became, there was anger and mistrust, suspicion. And anytime my dad would call, my mother, if she answered, she would quickly hand the phone off to me and my sisters. And really it was more just arrangements for, trying to pick us up or drop us off for visitations. And so it's interesting. My mother ended up getting baptized about the next summer after at our church, and we have a lake in our backyard, and we were hosting 4th of July party with the baptism for our church, and my mother was preparing to get baptized that morning, and I asked her the question. I said, "Hey, Mom, does this mean that you're going to heaven?" And my mom said, she's like, yeah, well, yeah, it does. And it's not because like I'm a good person. It's not because I've, my good works outweigh my bad works. But it's because of what Christ has done for me on the cross. And so that really made an impact, because then I said, well, if you're going to heaven, does that mean that I'm going to heaven? And she looked at me, and I still remember the moment. My mom said to, she's talking to her, 9-year-old son, no, it doesn't. You don't, God doesn't have any grandchildren, and you don't kind of get in on your parents', merits. And so that really, changes me because I start to realize that I've got to have my own, relationship with Jesus, and I have to experience my own kind of forgiveness. And so I remember that the following summer I was at Vacation Bible School for our church, and Vacation Bible School meant that we didn't have a lot. We were a small church, didn't have really any staff, so that meant that there was a group of teenagers that came from another church, a group of college kids that came from another church from out in the Midwest. I think it was out in Ohio or Indiana, and they came out to do Vacation Bible School with us and helped to do a week in the summertime. And I remember, and I had heard the gospel of Jesus, and I, got a very clear presentation from Dale Tubbs, who's one of our deacons at our church, and it just made sense to me. The fact that I had always thought that if my good works outweigh my bad works, that that I'd be golden for the kingdom of God, and to learn that it's more like an omelet where a bad egg spoils the whole omelet, and that's the way it is for all of us. We're imperfect and we're tainted. And so that led to me embracing Jesus as my Savior. And that next, summer, I ended up getting baptized. I talked to my pastor about that, and my mother. And in the same place that my mother and my stepfather got baptized, I got baptized a couple of years after. And in the process, mind you, something was going on with my father. My father lived 2 hours away from us down in Cape Cod, and he he had his own experiences of the church and of loss. And my grandfather passed away, in 1987. So I was about 7 years old when that happened, and it had a big impact on my dad. He was very, very close to his father, and so that meant that my dad was taking care of our family guest house that we had. He was kind of the landlord, helping out and doing a lot of odds and ends, and he lived at the house. And there was one tenant there. She was 19-year-old. Her name was Celeste, and she was going to Bible school. And she struck a friendship up with my father, and they started to talk about, life and God and about the Bible and about different things. And it really started to pique my dad's interest about the scriptures, about Jesus. And my dad was never opposed to God or the work of Christ. And so that led to, this ongoing conversation. And my dad had his own experience. The Lord spoke to my dad and through various means. And my dad embraced the gospel and became a Christian. And so this was happening parallel to what was happening to my mother, my stepfather, and me. And so I remember it very, clearly. It was this Saturday afternoon. It was preparing for my baptism now. My dad calls my mom. And my mom picks up the phone, and instead of handing off the phone to me or my sisters, my mother continues to talk to my father. And there's my mom sitting in the kitchen, same place where she became a Christian. And this conversation continues to go, and there's a tone in my mom's voice that was different. It wasn't this kind of like protective and quick and terse, turt, whatever that means, but terse tone. It was a thoughtful, listening, and warm tone. And as I was in the area listening to this conversation, my mom kept talking and talking. 3 hours go by. 3 hours go by, and my parents are still talking on the phone. And my mom's in tears, and they have been sharing their stories about forgiveness that they experienced in Jesus. And man, that just, it blew my mind. It blew my mind. And that hostility that had been there, I remember an instance where my dad was coming to pick us up for the weekend. And my stepfather was so angry with my dad that he had stashed like parts of a car, like a fender almost, behind a bush, just in case he needed to protect himself or to throw at my dad. That's how tense it was. And it was so anytime my dad came to visit, it was really, really harsh, and you felt this enmity in the family. And from that point on, after that conversation, it all went away. And I don't know if they all the different things they talked about, but forgiveness was something that they experienced together. And so it's incredible that it built this bridge for them to repair their relationship and actually be over time friends, and to co-parent in a whole other level. And it was amazing to see the changes that had taken place in my parents' life. And so I can honestly say, sitting here, that Jesus saved my family and brought my family together. Certainly not perfect. We're certainly had a lot of dysfunctions, and I went on to be a pretty rebellious high schooler, and got into drugs and alcohol and smoking and all sorts of different stuff, doing all the partying, and I think a lot of that had to do with the chase for something more, the chase to want to be kind of accepted in the world at some level, to be liked by friends. The friends that I had were kind of into partying and doing different things, and not only that, I think I wanted new experiences, and I wanted to see what this world that my sisters were in, who were had gone ahead of me in high school. And so I had my own experiences. And what's interesting is that my church never gave up on me as kind of being a prodigal son in the church. Prodigal meaning, a lost son. And so I had a great youth pastor, and he used to search me out throughout my junior high and high school years. He would track me down. His name is Dana, and he would track me down and take me out for ice cream, talk to me about what's going on in my life. Even my pastor Paul, he had his own rebellious experiences when he was in high school and did a lot of drugs and stuff. And so he reached out to me. I remember one time he took me to Burger King, and just no judgment, no harshness, but just wanted to talk to me and hear me out and what's going on and what are you doing, and I understand and stuff. So there was my church never really gave up on me, and they kept praying for me. And so what's interesting is at the end of my senior year in high school, the Lord had been doing quite a work. And I get to the point where I quit smoking cigarettes for no apparent reason. I didn't plan to do it, but I just kind of did it. And I was planning on, I applied to go to University of New Hampshire, UNH, and go to, be a pre-med major, maybe to make money, go off to med school and stuff. Doctor, lawyer, you can make money. Not that I love biology or anything like that, but I thought that'd be a good career. And so everything was set up. I was accepted on my financial aid package, and even roommate was assigned to me. So April of that year, my mother had asked me to go to a little local church conference, a little video conference. And I had told her that I would, and I never remembered that I agreed to this. And so that particular Monday, I go off with my friend Wheels. We went up after school. Wheels, his last name is Wheeler. We called him Wheels, John. And we went off and we got high. We went and smoked some weed, some pot. And after me and John, John drops me off. It's maybe about 4 o'clock or 4:30 or something like that. I know you're thinking 4:20. But I get dropped off, and then my mom gets home from work around 5:30, and so my mom's like, so hey, tonight's the night we're going to that conference. Are you ready to go? We're going to leave at 6 o'clock. And I'm like, I'm still high. I'm like, no, not going. Nope. And my mom's like, you told me that you were going to go. And I was just kind of like, Ma, no, I don't even remember saying that. And she pressed me. She held me to my word. And so I decided to go. And all the while, I was high. And so it's interesting, in God's providence, I had in the process of the travel, it was about a half an hour we went to Nashua from Manchester. It's about a half an hour drive. And I ended up, I guess you could call it sobering up, but it pretty much killed my high. And it was a quiet car ride down there. And of course, it's such a buzzkill when you're going into, a church context when you have just done drugs. So yeah, totally killed my high. And when we got there, obviously we were going to a church, and I saw people from my church that were there, people from a youth group that I, like I said, had been, in and out of the youth group over many year period. And so this little local church conference is called Basic Youth Principles in Solving, or Basic Life Principles in Solving Youth Conflicts. And it was really about how the Bible can practically help us to have harmonious relationships in our family. And that's obviously something that we long for in our family. And so as we sat there and I listened to the teaching that was going on, the Lord just really did a work in my life. And I had known that the Bible is practical, and I had understood that Jesus loved me and he died for me and died for all of us sinners. And but yet what that looked like as far as living a life that was based on that, I didn't know what that looked like. And so when we started to hear some of the examples and some of the practicalities of how the scriptures really apply to relationships, we were starting to hear examples, and me and my mom started looking at each other like, that's my sister Robin. Oh yeah, that's my sister Wayne. That's just like something we went through last week. And so we started to hear, very practical, tangible things about how the scriptures address who we are and how we relate with one another. And it blew my mind. And something changed in me that night. And so it's interesting when we started to go home, me and my mom were driving, and my mom, she looked at me, and we're driving. Obviously, she's driving, and she says, "Dave, I guess something I gotta confess to you." And I said, "Okay. What you got, Mom?" And I've always thought my mom, she does nothing wrong. She's, just always reads her Bible, always in prayer, always thoughtful and caring and considerate to people, always a shoulder to cry on for the friends in her life, always supportive of the church and sacrificial in her giving. I mean, what wrong could my mom possibly do? So she's like, there's those times, it happens to, in every family where, you get teased by your sisters, like, you were, not planned, and your sisters had said that to you a couple of times, that you weren't planned. In other words, that we did not intend to have you. And I've want to confess that I've lied to you about that. Indeed, you were not planned. You were a condom baby. Condom broke. And actually, when I found out I was pregnant, I was devastated. And I am so sorry for lying to you. And so I'm just like, I'm starting to bawl. I'm like, wow, Mom, I forgive you. I forgive you. And then what in turn that did is that inspired me, freed me up to start confessing to my mom sins in my life. And so what I had been holding back from my mom is the fact that I had agreed to never have drugs in the house and never to have drug paraphernalia in the house. But in fact, I did. And I didn't have drugs in the house at the time, but I did have tons of drug paraphernalia, bongs and bowls and all sorts of smoking apparatuses and stuff like that, and equipment. And so I told her that. I said, Mom, I have stuff. But yet, when we get home, I plan to get rid of that. And right there, it was this tangible, beautiful love that we experienced together and reconciliation because of what Christ had done for us. So, and as a result of that, the Lord that week ended up changing my life. That whole summer, I had graduated from high school, and that whole summer I had spent with my dad, down in Cape Cod, and he worked, second and third shift. And so I took that time, that opportunity to, in a sense, I was kind of exiled from all my friends, didn't really see them anymore. Try to keep in touch with them, of course, but I ended up just doing a lot of studying of the scriptures, and I had a couple of books that I had read through. My mother started handing me books. My mom's an avid reader, had a ton of books about the Christian faith, and so she started handing me book after book, and my pastor started handing me book after book, and then all of a sudden, summer I decided that I really wanted to know Christ more. And so what I did all summer was I played tennis during the days. I either practiced by myself or find people to play with, and then I would read my Bible and then wait for my dad to come home. And what was really, really cool is around 4th of July, as I've been studying my Bible a lot, and I was at my grandmother's house, and my uncle was there. My uncle is a Buddhist, and he actually knows his Bible very well. And so we were watching Jeopardy. and as we're watching Jeopardy, the Bible category comes up. And so I'm here, I'm thinking, I've been studying my Bible. Of course, I'm a Christian. I'm going to know the answers to this. And the answer was something about this event that caused the dispersion of all these peoples and the confusing of languages. And so in my mind, having not read through the whole Bible, but knowing it pretty decently, I threw out the answer, what is Noah's Ark? And my uncle goes, what is the Tower of Babel? And my Buddhist uncle was right, and I was wrong. And I sat there, and I was like embarrassed. And it's a testament to how well he knows his Bible, but at the same time, it's a testament to how little I knew my Bible. And so from that point on, I went home, and I made it my goal for the next 2 months that I'm going to read a book of the Bible every single day. I had a study Bible there with the introduction to every single book of the Bible, and I read through my entire Bible. And so that led me to a whole path of going to Bible school and getting a theological education. But needless to say, God completely changed my life. The story goes on and on and on, but that is a bit of the beginning of it. And that's why I became a Christian. Thank you, Snickers. What you barking about, huh? What you barking about? What you barking about?